Welcome. I'm Dr. Amanda, and you're at the Retirement Income School, where you'll get financial education to help you protect your wealth and build guaranteed lifetime income so you can retire financially relaxed. And for this lesson, I am so honored to have one of the most respected voices in retirement tax planning joining me. Ed Slott, he's a CPA, author of the Retirement Savings Time Bomb Ticks Louder. If you don't have this book, it is a must read, and I'll put the link in the show notes. He's also the founder of the Ed Slott IRA Elite Advisor Group, which I'm proud to be a member of. What we're going to talk about today is how you've saved your whole life wondering how to keep more of your money. And this lesson is going to be really important for you because we're going to break down a few things. Why the retirement savings time bomb is ticking louder, how smart Roth conversions can eliminate future tax pain, the RMD chain reaction that blindsides so many retirees, the costly and overlooked widow's penalty, and how to create tax smart legacies for your loved ones. And in this conversation, as you know, at the Retirement Income School, I focus on safe money tools like annuities, whole life insurance, and tax-free buckets to support strategies that Ed's going to talk about to protect you and help you create that guaranteed lifetime income. So I'm so psyched to have you on today, Ed. Thanks for being here.
Well, I'm glad to be here, but as you might see, my last stop before this unexpectedly was a dental appointment, so I'm a little numb, but there is a tie-in. As you were saying that, I said, well, how am I going to tie in this dental? I happen to love dental work, like a root canal or something. Why would I love that? Because I get rid of the problem. Just like with taxes, if you get rid of the problem, you always feel better. So I take the long view. Yes, I'd rather not be in the dentist chair, but I'd rather not have problems later on.
That's
And I've gone
always
beyond root canal, by the way. I'm into implants, just taking the whole problem out, literally by the root, getting it out and not having a problem anymore. Another dental analogy. Now, this was the specialist I was at today, but my regular dentist who retired, I can't believe she retired. I said, why are you retiring? I'm your retirement plan. Can you look at my teeth? You know better. I'm your retirement plan. Why would you retire? Yeah, anyway, the point is she had this sign in her office that said, ignore your teeth and they'll go away. It's the same thing with your retirement account. You ignore it, the taxes are accruing every minute you do nothing. It's like rotting away, just like what happens with your teeth if you don't take care of them, which I didn't for many years, and now I'm paying for it. Also, I
so
like
good.
candy, but now I have to give that up.
Oh, darn it. I love these analogies. That's really powerful because I think you're right. The title of your book, when we think about the retirement savings time bomb, talk about that a little bit, how most people, like you're saying, avoid the problem. Not always until it's too late, but it causes a bigger problem if you avoid it. And so talk about that a little bit. What does it mean in terms of thinking about a time bomb and what's going to happen as potentially future taxes rise?
Well, I am worried about future taxes increasing because as a CPA and somebody who works with math, I have to believe in math. And I look at I don't even know what the current debt level at 38, 39 trillion. All I know is if they have to round up to the nearest trillion, that's a problem. In fact, I just saw something in the paper, I think yesterday or today, I have it here. There was something about it they say that in 6 years, that's when benefits may have to come back on Social Security. So you got to think about that. And basically, nobody in Congress knows what to do. And at some point, I think they're going to have to raise taxes to get the money to pay full benefits.
Yeah. When we think about taxes increasing, often people on my Retirement Income School YouTube channel in the comments, they'll say they're never going to be able to raise taxes because that's political suicide.
It
And
is.
it is,
Yeah.
but there are other backdoor ways to
Right,
increase,
right,
right? So I,
right.
I think that's important to consider. And especially when you're moving into the retirement era, you want to keep all of the money that you possibly can, and then for passing on a legacy. So I know you're huge on Roth conversions. Talk about how that plays into planning for the
Well,
future?
even if most people, I mean, Congress has been kicking the can down the road. This is not a new problem. It's been a problem forever. And at some point, I believe the math will kick in and they will have to find some way, like you say, trimming around the edges, not a direct tax hit, but little at a time, maybe taxing more Social Security, taxing some other things, cutting back on some benefits, putting in income thresholds. There's a lot of ways to kind of
Yeah.
work around where you don't notice till you file your tax return. But let's say most people do believe taxes will have to go up at some point, but you don't want to be the one left standing when the music stops. And that may be at the worst possible time in retirement when you're counting on that money and counting on having an income stream that is based on how much you keep after taxes. See, that's the key with your retirement money. Most of that money in IRAs and 401ks, it has not yet been taxed, but it will be. That's why they call it tax deferred. Tax free is way different. That's better. Tax free money is worth a lot more. So the whole thing with the Roth conversion, it's all a big giant bet on where you think your future tax rates will lie. If you think they'll be higher, then the Roth wins. But let's say Congress doesn't do anything and the rates stay the same. Your rate could still go up even if rates stay the
Mhm.
same. I don't think anybody thinks tax rates will go lower because we're at historically low rates and a new tax law just extended those rates. We're at historically low rates. Nobody thinks the rates will go lower. But if you do nothing, your rates may increase. Here's why. Doing nothing, just because you don't look at a problem doesn't mean it went away. It's
Just
like,
the dentist.
yeah, yeah, right. Well, there's a different version. There's an old Henny Youngman line. He said, when I read about the evils of drinking, I gave up reading. You can't say just because I don't look over here. So you might say, no, I don't want to convert to a Roth because I don't want to pay tax up front. And my taxes won't be higher in retirement. Well, if you do nothing, just because you didn't look over there, your retirement account, if you didn't do the conversion, still grows and grows and grows and grows. And guess what? At some point, you're going to be forced, right now it's at age 73, to take required minimum distributions. And at that point, that could spike your income for the rest of your life. Even if rates stayed the same, your rate might be higher. And that's where the Roth might have paid off. It's really, like I said, a big bet on future tax rates. But the whole concept of, and this is a life lesson, one of the biggest ways to be a success in anything, including taxes, two words, and you heard it at our last Elite Advisor meeting, delayed gratification.
Mhm.
Everybody likes to have everything now, but the ones who delay the gratification, they get it later. They get more later. One of the things I always like to say about taxes is something it's a secret, but I'll give you the secret. You know what Benjamin Franklin said about secrets? Three people can keep a secret if two of them are dead. Here's the secret. Three words. Pay taxes now. Now, when you say that, and I say that in public seminars all the time, people say, Ed, what kind of secret is that? What kind of accountant are you pay taxes now? If I pay taxes now, I'll immediately have less, not more. I'm here to tell you the exact opposite is true. Because if you can get this money out at these historically low rates, you will have more money and more of it growing tax free. And you'll remove the uncertainty, the worry, the anxiety of what future higher rates can do to your standard of living in retirement. That takes that off the table. Today's rates are known. Future tax rates are unknown. And your rate, like I said, could be higher due to higher RMDs. I'll give you an example, Amanda. For 40 years, I had a tax practice. I had clients come in right at this desk. I've been at this desk over 40 years, believe it or not. Yeah, it looks that way, right? And I remember telling this one client about Roth conversions, and he was a high income guy. And he said, no, 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 I have a big W 2. When I stop working and I take that W 2 off the table, in retirement, I'm much lower income. And I said, that's not going to be the case. I'm telling you, you got a large IRA. You're adding to it because if you actually was adding to the 401k, which became his IRA. Anyway, so this went on for a few years, never did the Roth conversion. Finally, he comes in to this office to do his taxes for his first full year of retirement. In other words, no W-2. So he comes in like this. Okay, Ed. I give him the tax return. He says, how could this be? My income's higher than my best working years. I said, how could this be? Because you never listen to me. That's how it could be. I told you this would happen for the last 10 years. You kept building. Sure, now you have a few million in your IRA. Your RMDs are higher than your W-2.
I
Yeah.
love the roles you get on because you just are a wealth of wisdom and knowledge, and you've worked with so many people. When I'm with clients, I use all of your sheets, and I want to share this because I think this one often blows
Yes, I
the
just updated that for
mind.
2026. I'm
Right.
going to get a new one. And by
Yeah.
the way, just so people know, these are the kind of resources you get when you're a member of our elite group. We talked about Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group. I think
Yeah.
we should make it clear. Has nothing to do with investing. It's all tax planning. I think that's where people can make the most money, even more than in stocks. Stocks is speculation. Tax planning is math. When you go, and I'm not talking about doing your taxes. There's a big difference between tax preparation and tax planning. Here's the difference. Tax preparation costs you money. Tax planning makes you money. That's a big difference. So that's why you're in this group, to be able to have strategies that most people are not using. And we give charts, these cheat sheets, like you say. So if you look at this, the one you have on, it's up to 25, but you're going to have the new one. You
Yeah.
actually have it, our resources online for our members. You already have it, but 26 is also capped at 37%. But the
Yeah.
point you're making here, look at the history.
Oh, it's wild when you look at this. And most people don't know this. They think, oh, what do we mean when we're talking high taxes? 91%. And I think about in this case, when we're talking about RMDs, and then especially adding the widow's penalty, this is an area that really struck me when I learned about it. And then you dove into it a lot at our last IRA advisor event, talking about how widows are going to be impacted. And often I have clients who will come to me who the husband has been doing the planning and they don't know as much. And this is not every time, not every case, but it's pretty typical in that age category to have the men doing the finances, the women don't exactly know what's going on, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, my husband passed and I have all this money, but then they don't realize that they're going to be taxed at a much higher rate. And I think about this, if we have that chain reaction and we've got RMDs, then we've got widow's penalty, where you're taxed at a higher rate for the same income because now you're in a single taxpayer bracket than a married filing jointly. And I just think, oh no, what if something like this happens when you retire? You're in a 91% tax bracket and you have the RMDs, you also have widow's penalty. What's going to happen to that money that you've saved for retirement? Will it be enough? Will you be safe? How much are you going to pay to taxes? How much can you pass on to your heirs? And so this blew my mind. When I saw this, I always heard you say this, and I've heard other financial experts say this, but when I saw this on paper in this way, and I looked at, for those of you who are listening on the podcast, we're looking at, okay, in 1913, the top federal income tax rate by year was 7%. Okay, then it went up to
There's a little
73.
story about that. When they first started, that was the 16th Amendment in 1913, and the whole country was against starting an income tax system. And people said in Congress, they said, don't worry about it. This 7% rate only is going to apply to the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the Carnegies, like 7 families. So then there was another congressman that said, well, maybe we should at least cap it so it doesn't get out of control at 10%. And they said, no, it'll never go more than 7%. Now look what happened.
That is wild. It's
And you
so
look at the
true. Yeah.
years of the wars. The years of the wars is when the country came together. Look at the 40s. That's where you start seeing it go to 94, 91, all of that stuff.
That's mind
And,
blowing.
there's a
Yeah.
saying, Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And I don't know if we'll go back to these draconian rates, but it shows it can happen. And that's why I put this chart together. Most
Yeah.
people don't realize how bad it can get. So another way to say that saying is, if you don't learn from history, you're bound to repeat it.
Yes, that's brilliant. And right now we've got, okay, for the last, since 2018, it's been capped at 37%. And we know that the quote unquote permanent 37% is until 2028. So I talk a lot about the power of using Roth conversions between now and 2028 because we know the tax brackets. We talk a
Mhm.
little bit about that, how to strategically do tax planning. And I love how you point out the difference between tax preparation and tax planning. Often CPAs are doing tax preparation and just doing your filing. We want tax planning so that we can think about the future and avoid or eliminate some of these tax time bombs that are going to happen to us. So will you dive into that some?
Yes, well, I'm not saying convert everything. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't have to convert. When you say that, people freak out and say, oh no, I have $1 million or 300,000, it'll cost me a fortune. Not if you use the low brackets each year. Do a series of smaller Roth conversions over time using up the low tax brackets. We have low tax brackets. That chart you showed only showed the top federal rate. But a lot of the early dollars, all the earlier dollars are taxed at 10, 12, 22, 24. You can get hundreds of thousands of dollars out at 22, 24% rates. It's unbelievable how low these rates are historically. And every year you don't maximize a low rate, you've lost that opportunity forever. You can't get it back. You don't get credit. I remember an accountant coming up to me at one of the programs. He was so happy with himself. He said, Ed, you know what happened? I had this one client. I kept him in the 12% bracket. I said, I'm sorry to hear that. You blew the 22%, 24%. And you got to look at all these things. Like, I'll give you an example. During COVID, those years, and I said this during that time, I don't know if people listen, a lot of small business owners with pass-through income, S corps, partnerships, sole proprietors, where their business income flows to their personal return, they had horrible years. I saw situations where clients had literally, had businesses that were related to people coming into the store and showing 10, 20, 50,000, $200,000 losses. What we did, if you came to my programs, then I told every advisor, you look for those losses. Anybody that's showing a 200,000 should be converting $200,000 for free. And they didn't think of it because the business owner was so worried, I'm going to lose my business and all. They weren't thinking about opportunities. Meanwhile, they had hundreds of thousands in IRAs that could have been transferred, converted for free using those pass-through losses. You got
Yeah.
to look at factors that apply to you. Anytime you have lower income, that's when you want to pile in more Roth conversion dollars and keep it at these low brackets. I would say for most people, you should be able to maximize the 22 and 24% bracket each year. And the sweet spot is really in your 60s. If you're in your 60s, I call it the sweet spot. It's in sweet spot for taxes, but also for life. Hopefully the kids are out of the house. That never happens. Now we have boomerang kids. It used to be the American dream was to own your own home. Now it's getting the kids out of it. So your kids are out of the house. Maybe you paid off your mortgage, frees up some cash, and you're just coming off your highest earnings years, or you may still be in your highest earning years. That would be the time in your 60s. Because once you hit 73, or depending on your age, could be 75, depending on the tax law at the time, your RMD, required minimum distribution age, then you're constrained. Then you have to take money out. Then it's not about planning. Then you're on what I call the government plan. I always say in my seminars, you want your plan, not the government plan. And people in seminars, these are consumer programs I do around the country. Whenever I say that, they say, sometimes, not all the time. Some people say, Ed, you keep saying you want your plan. I should have my plan, not the government plan. What is the government plan? Maybe I'm interested. No, you're not. That's not a plan. That's a constraint. You're forced to take that money out in RMDs, whether you need it or not. And most people, believe it or not, that take RMDs don't even need the money. They take it because they have to. Now they're forced to pay tax on money they don't need. Then they put, so what do? They have another problem I call unspent RMDs.
Mhm.
They didn't use it because they didn't need it, so they put it in a taxable account. Now it's growing taxable income, dividends, capital gains, and they're just tax on tax. The best plan is in your 60s, if that's your sweet spot. Like I said, start a plan, a series of Roth conversions using up those low brackets. So maybe by the time you get to RMD age, it'll be very little or maybe none at all. And then
Yeah.
your income will be low for the rest of your life.
I love this one strategy that I use with people in their 60s. And like you're saying, sometimes if you're in your 60s and you're still high income, you might not be able to top off that 24% bracket. But let's
No,
say
that's true.
yeah, let's say you're retiring and you go, okay, I've got all of this money. I've got some runway until RMDs hit. So then it makes sense to start doing partial Roth conversions. So we'll use annuities because I really like safe money buckets. You said earlier, stocks are speculation. And I
Right.
agree. I think, of course, there's a place for stocks in everyone's portfolio if they choose that. And also, there's a place for annuities. So we'll use an annuity so that there's a safe money bucket where they can do partial Roth conversions. So I use
Right.
Roth-friendly companies where those companies will allow those partial Roth conversions. Then they're protected because there's never downside. There's no risk of losing money as you're doing the conversion. So dive into annuities a little bit. I know that you talk some about safe money buckets and safe money strategies. Where's a place in a portfolio for annuities for people who are in the retirement era?
Well, there's something to be said in these speculative times, volatile times now, for guaranteed income. I think that's very important. And again, I just said it before, I'm a tax advisor. I don't sell stocks, bonds, funds, insurance, annuities. I've spent my life helping people keep more of their money, save more, protect against taxes, estate planning, all of that. But I learned early on from my own mother. My father died many years earlier. And my mother was like, she was like the energizer. She went well into her 90s. In fact, even in her 90s, she was still looking for a man.
Wow.
And she complained, nobody can keep up with her. She used to complain, I'm a date, not a patient.
That's amazing.
So she had an advisor, maybe
Yeah.
somebody like you, that saw that after my father passed. And this is before I knew anything about this. And he said, you're going to go a long time. You need guaranteed income. So she sold the home we grew up in after my father passed and put it in, I think, 4 or 5 of these annuities. I didn't know really what they were at the time that much, but that changed her life and our life. It changed her life because she had guaranteed income for life and she lived a long life. Those checks, talk about financial security and not having to worry. Those checks came in every month, no matter how old she got, no matter how sick she got, no matter how the market performed. She didn't have to worry about any of that. And even in her final years, I would go up to see her. I remember right before she passed, I looked at her checking account. I said, Ma, you only have like $600 left. She said, what do I care? I get 5 new checks every month. In her mind, she could live like a drunken sailor and like, spend like it because she had new money coming in. She never worried about that. Plus her Social Security, it was enough to pay her apartment rent, do whatever she wanted. And she was just, here's an area I don't have any data on other than my own eyes and ears. But I found people like my mother who have guaranteed income. They're just happier people. They don't
Mhm.
worry about anything.
Yeah. Wade Fat talks about it. There is good research to support that people who have annuities are happier in retirement.
But with the gifts she gave us, and I always tell people when I talk about these things about the importance of guaranteed income, not for everything, but my rule, if I had a rule, it would be for your basic monthly living expenses, whatever that number is. You don't want to leave that up to the stock market. Oh, the market's down. I can't pay the light bill this month. Nobody wants to live like that.
Yeah.
And the gift she gave us is the gift of her own financial security. I always tell people the greatest gift you can give your family is the gift of your own financial security. Or to put it another way, the greatest gift you can give your children is to not move in with them.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to come to that. And that's the gift she gave us. And the only thing she ever had me do near the end, every January, she would have me make this calculation because she had to know by how much she beat the insurance company by outliving their projections. I think that kept her going. Oh, I feel a little bad today, but I'm not going anywhere. I got 4 checks coming on Tuesday. I think that kept her going.
That is awesome. It's like gamifying insurance.
Yeah. So she
That's
loved that.
funny.
But it
Yeah.
made a difference in her life. And remember, she lived through several stock crashes where her friends lost money. And
Yeah.
I know, stocks go up and down in an upward way. Stocks return over time unless you run out of time. And a lot of her friends around her age ran out of time. Now, I'm in New York. I'm in Long Island. Actually, she had an apartment about 2 blocks away from where I am now in her later years, so I could run over there. And she used to hop on the train here, and she loved going to Broadway shows. I think it was the 2008, 2009, or the 2003 crash. One of them, she started going alone because her friends who didn't have guaranteed income and had money in the market, they couldn't afford that anymore because they were getting into that cycle. There's a name for it. I can't think of it. The cycle attacks are when the money starts going down, you start spending.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. Sequence of returns risk.
sequence of
Yeah.
returns. I
Yeah.
couldn't think of it, but
Yeah.
that's exactly what I'm talking about. Where your money goes down, but you're still spending it. You can never get out from under this
Yeah.
cycle of deterioration of your money. So she still went in and she went to the shows herself, but her friends couldn't do it because they didn't have guaranteed income.
Yeah.
So it does make a difference, especially as you get older. Now let's combine, you talked about annuities with what we talked about before. I learned from her. And I realized the only thing better than guaranteed income for life, and if you've been following what Amanda and I have been talking about, you know what I'm going to say. The only thing better than guaranteed income for life is what I have. Now, that people, I'll make a dramatic pause. What does he have? Well, the only thing better than guaranteed income for life is guaranteed tax-free income for life. So what did I do? I learned from my mother the value of guaranteed income for life, but I got those annuities, but I put them in my Roth IRA. I don't have an IRA because I converted everything. And everything I've talked about on these programs, I did for myself and my family. So that's why I can talk with the passion because this is what I believe in. I did for my own family and myself. So in my Roth, I have these annuities, not for the whole Roth. I still have aggressive stocks in the Roth, but the annuity hedge or the guardrail or the buffer or the downside risk allows me to invest more aggressively in that Roth, which I love because anything that does hit and grows absolutely tax-free. But if I ever did need guaranteed income, which I'm hoping I don't, I could annuitize those annuities from my Roth. I'd have guaranteed income for life because they're from the Roth, guaranteed tax-free. So combining the strategies we were just talking about.
Yeah, that to me is the sweet spot. If you need guaranteed income, get it to Roth if possible. If it makes sense for you in the future, if you think your taxes are going to increase if you were to have RMDs. Yeah, brilliant. I love this.
Or just for peace of mind, knowing, there's something, and again, you could speak to this better with your training. There's something about knowing those checks, like I said with my mother, are coming in every month, no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then with annuities these days, there are doublers for long-term care events. There's a lot of flexibility. And then I think sometimes annuities of the old days, people worried that the money was going to go away if you passed and you drawn down the cost basis.
Right.
And now that can be passed on. And then if you have it Roth, it's passed on Roth. It's really great that way. Talk about tax-free legacy. So I know we've talked about planning for couples, planning for individuals, thinking about how to mitigate or optimize your tax strategy. Now let's chat about tax-free legacy because there are a lot of people who, like you said, don't need the guaranteed lifetime income, but they are thinking about how to pass on inheritances in a tax advantaged way. So I wanted you to highlight the 10-year rule, how that affects families and how people can plan for that.
Well, back to Roth IRAs, they have a unique advantage. And let's go back. You passed over, you talked about the widow's penalty, but let's go back to the person who thinks I'll be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, so I shouldn't do the Roth, like my client, right? That kind of guy. So I would extend it. What I say when anybody says to me, I'll be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, I always say there's no I in team, because it's not just about you. Yes, you may be in a lower tax bracket because you're filing joint returns, but what happens, say that, and the man usually dies first. Statistics show husbands die first. Matter of fact, there's been several articles, you saw it in our program, where widows will inherit some $50 trillion or something, most of it taxable because it's coming from 401ks. So I say to the person who says, I'll be in a lower tax bracket, I'll say, but your wife won't when you die. What are you going to do about that? And let me expand on what you said, because what I call the widow's penalty, it's very severe. Uh, think about it this way. You're a widow. Most couples leave everything to each other. That's fine, right? But when your husband dies, you're going to inherit everything. Now you have everything. And other than the adjustment in Social Security, you're going to have the same income, the same RMDs that you had when you filed both together. Actually, your income will be actually a little lower because of the Social Security impact, but yet you'll be paying at a much higher rate. That can easily jump from 22 or 24% up to 35%, even at our rates. But there's a bigger problem. So I'm talking to the husbands now who will leave their wives with this problem, this widow's penalty. Yes, he thinks he saved money by not converting, and he's taking his RMDs. Now he dies. Now she has to file as single, and the rates will go through the roof. Now she's going to have the same RMDs, but taxed at much higher rates, which means everything tied to income, it's like a pinball machine, everything lights up. Because now more of your Social Security will be taxed, more IRMA charges, the Medicare Parts B and D surcharges, the 3.8% tax on net investment income. Anything good in the tax code where you get a deduction, a credit, a benefit based on levels of adjusted gross income, you may be out of that. You may phase out of that because your income's too high. So it's like
Chain reaction. Yeah, chain reaction.
yeah,
Yeah.
chain
Yeah.
ripple effect.
Yeah.
Everything starts crumbling, and you're just paying a fortune in taxes. You just lost your husband. Now you're losing your money. This is not a good place. Now, here's the right way to do it. Feel like some of those commercials where they say, here's the wrong way to get a stain out, here's the right way to get a stain out. And I'm not talking about Tide, although that does work. That Tide stick works. But let's say the husband over years, I'm not saying bite the bullet all at once. Some people may have to. You know when that may be the case? When one spouse has died during the year, you may seriously want to consider a big chunk or maybe a full Roth conversion, because that's the last year as the widow you'll be able to use in general the final married joint return rates. Next year you go to single. So let's say instead of what we just heard, that horror story with the widow's penalty, that chain reaction, let's say most of the money was converted and you have a smaller IRA. Well, now you'll have smaller RMDs, so your income will be low. That means all those chain reaction things will probably go away or be have much less of an impact. You'll keep more of your money. Your taxes won't be an issue. And remember, once you have a Roth, you never have to take that money out, only when you need it. And when you need it, it's absolutely income tax free. And if you don't need it, now we're getting to your question, the wife dies and you have children. They inherit what's left of the Roth. And even they, under the new rules that we have from the Secure Act a few years ago, under these rules, they still have to withdraw all the inherited Roth money by the end of the 10th year after death. But during the 10 years, they don't have to touch anything. So look at all the years, maybe decades of tax-free compounding, growth, snowballing, accumulation during the wife's life, and now 10 more years, all growing income tax-free. That takes me back to my first point, delayed gratification. Because you paid some tax, you bought the bullet, and you did some things that maybe you didn't want to do. Look at the benefits, not only for your spouse you leave behind, but for your children and even your grandchildren.
I had a mic, I'd drop it. That was awesome. You
But
know,
one thing leads to another. It is all,
yeah,
what you said is perfect. It is a giant chain reaction, but it starts by taking action. And
yeah.
this is another one of those coach things that you probably say to people. Life rewards action in all things. By taking some action now, you get big benefits later.
Yeah, it's so true. So much of wealth building and protecting your wealth is about planning. And
Yes.
so my history was as a business coach. I don't do it currently anymore, but I always work with my clients. Everything that I coached on for years has been brought into the way that I help structure plans for my clients because what you're saying is so critical. It's a planning perspective. And you need to be a person who looks into the future and can have delayed gratification. You've sometimes got to, I think, in the moment, it's like, okay, short-term pain for long-term gain is huge when you're thinking about Roth conversions
Yeah.
because people often will go like, "Oh, I don't want to pay the taxes now." Well,
Nobody does.
right. No one wants to pay taxes ever, of course. And I always think, well, would you rather pay taxes on the seed or the harvest? We've heard
Right.
financial professionals saying this for a long time. And I go, well, I'd rather pay taxes on the seed, smaller amount. And then I think it's also a mindset thing. And you talked about this at the beginning. Sometimes people think, okay, well, oh, I've got $1 million in my 401k. No, you don't. You've got minus that percentage of taxes. And then that trips people up. So what you're saying is to me critically important. It's a lot of mindset work to plan, to think about your partner and how they're going to be affected by the widows or widowers penalty. RMDs. I'm shocked, Ed. This is something that's kind of blown me away when I work with people. How many people come to me and say that their planner has never talked to them about RMDs? How is that
Well, it's
possible?
worse than that. Even the people that do take RMDs, I would say, and this again is out of the box, controversial when I say it. You've heard me say it at programs. The RMD stands for required minimum distribution. The M stands for minimum, but it doesn't stand for maximum. Why only take the minimum? If the minimum
Mm,
puts you in only a 12% bracket, take more. Use up these low brackets, but they have this minimal mentality. Oh,
yeah.
I'm not going to take one more dime than I'm forced to. Well, maybe you should. And the same thing goes for beneficiaries who have to take taxable money, not the Roth beneficiaries, but if they're inheriting a traditional IRA, they may have distributions for years 1 through 9 of the 10-year rule. That's for traditional, not Roths, and they're generally smaller. But then you have this giant hit. Remember, in year 10, if you have a traditional IRA, it's 100% RMD. Everything is an RMD. Wouldn't it be better to smooth out those taxes over 10 years by taking more than you have to? Think maximum. How much can I get out? You shouldn't let RMDs drive the tax planning. You should let the tax planning drive the distribution planning.
Yeah, that's so smart. Such a smart mindset shift to start with in your
Yeah, you have
planning.
to shift everything to see
Yeah.
how can I have more and keep more, have more and more of it tax-free later, and always pay taxes at the lowest rates. That's my general rule in all tax planning. You saw it all over the manual. I put it in every manual. The secret to saving the most in taxes, always pay taxes at the lowest rates. But there's another part to that that makes this tough. I always say always pay taxes at the lowest rates, even if that means paying taxes before they're required. And that's the part people, again, can't get over.
Yeah, yeah. Brilliant. Okay, I know we're gonna wrap up, so I want to ask, you've worked with people for decades, and you're talking about tax savings, being strategic, thinking ahead. What would you say is the greatest lesson that you wish, and this is about retirement income, what's the greatest lesson that you wish you had learned earlier and that everyone knew to save them from stress in the future when they're in that retirement era?
Well, my greatest lesson doesn't count because I didn't have the opportunity. But I would say start earlier, start putting money away in a retirement account earlier. But I didn't have that option. The only option was a taxable account. So I fell into the trap like everybody. And I would say start with a Roth. If Roth were available, can you imagine the young people? They get to start by building tax-free retirement account. Every young person should be, they enter the workforce, it's still a problem. Here's what they do. They enter the workforce, they get immediately enrolled in a 401k, and nobody tells them go to the Roth side. A Roth, why are you adding to a future problem? Young people and people in low brackets should only be doing Roth IRAs for continuing contributions and Roth 401ks at work. Why add gasoline to the fire? And for the older people like 50s and 60s that, like me, I'm actually my 70s, but that fell into this thing because it was the only way we had to contribute to retirement. And now we're overweighted in traditional IRAs and 401ks and not enough tax-free. There's no balance. In investments, people always say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't invest all in one stock. Same thing with taxes. Yet you have no tax risk diversification. You have all your money in a future taxable account, and we don't know what your income and your future rates what might be. So I would say if I had to do it over again, which I couldn't because the Roths weren't available, but I would have started contributing more towards retirement accounts when I was young. And I remember I had I think my second job in accounting, and IRAs had just come out in the mid 70s or so. And my boss was on top of it in the accounting firm. He said, you should put money in an IRA. And here I am. I guess I was maybe 22 or something. I said, did you see the law? I can't touch that money till I'm 59 and a half. To me, that's 100 years away. You can't even think like that. But young people today can, because when they put their money in a Roth, like if you contribute to a Roth contributions can be withdrawn anytime for any reason, tax and penalty free. Roth contributions, forget about the 5-year-old, the actual contributions. So they don't have to worry anymore about their money being tied up. Now, obviously, the best plan is to keep it growing and not touch it until your retirement age. But let's say you need it, life happens, you have at least access to the actual contributions.
Yeah, it's an incredible strategy that I think was overlooked. And on at least the Retirement Income School channel, I talk about Roth a lot, in part because I've just been very influenced by thinking about how to help people keep their money safe, to grow it, make it last, all of those important things that are critical in the retirement era. And so I love that Roth is an option and that I've learned so much from you about it. I'm so grateful that I'm a part of your group.
I am too. Your clients are lucky because most advisors don't have that tax planning knowledge. Another thing, if a rule I've learned over life, like with other things we talked about, once you have something, nobody likes paying for things, but once they have the thing they paid for, they wish they had more.
Yeah.
That's true with two things I've found. Roth IRAs, people that have them love them. They love the idea of looking at their statement, say, wow, this is 100% for me. I don't have to share it with anybody. So people with Roths wish they had more. The same thing with life insurance. Everybody that has life insurance that I know wishes they had more, especially I'm talking the cash value permanent like I have myself. I said, why didn't I do more of that? Because you didn't want to spend the money then.
Yeah.
So think about it that way. Everybody that did it wishes they had more.
We need to have you back on for a whole conversation about that, because that's another thing that I use strategically for myself and my clients is high cash value life insurance, because again, that's also tax-free income in the future. And
Yeah.
everybody wishes they had started younger and had more. When they see the value of growing those
Right.
dividends tax-free, it's wild what you can do with
So you
life
can't
insurance.
look over here at the paying part of it. That's the pain. Yeah, don't look at that. Once that's passed, and I'll tell you another thing about the people that do Roth conversions. They never look back and say, oh, look at all the money I spent on that. No, they just look at how much they have that's growing tax-free.
Yeah, it's a great strategy. Okay, I know we got to wrap up.
All right.
Thank you. What a wealth of wisdom. I really appreciate you taking your time to be here and share with my community. If you are watching now, make sure that you go to retirementincome.school to book a Q&A call. You'll see a button at the top of the page. We'll have a conversation and talk about many of the things that we talked about on the show today to help you keep your money safe and make it last so you can enjoy retirement. This content is for educational purposes only and is not financial, legal, or tax advice. Always consult a qualified professional before making decisions about your retirement.